Hello, I'm Stuart Preston, and this is the Stone Ape Reports, where I have conversations with those who have changed their lives with the help of psychedelics. In this episode, I spoke with Holly, a functional medicine practitioner, and her story of trauma in a bad, well, let's call it dark, trip, and more. You can find Holly and her work at harmonyfromwithin.com. You're going to enjoy this one, so let's welcome Holly. Holly, thank you so much for joining me here on the Stoned Ape Reports. I'm really excited to speak with you. I know you and I had some communications earlier and really kind of came to this by bringing up the subject of, quote, bad trips. And I know that you've had a dark journey or some things you wanted to share. So first of all, thank you for being here and being open and talking about this. But, why don't we jump in and tell us about that journey?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my
It's
pleasure.
almost like it's almost like I don't know where to start, but basically, these sacred medicines, psychedelic medicines, especially psilocybin and ayahuasca, have honestly been like the ultimate assisters and facilitators to help me transform my life, transform my brain, my nervous system, my body, and really, let go of a lot of trauma that I didn't really realize I was carrying with me most of my life, but was totally wreaking havoc in basically every part of my life. So that's really the main part, is that I feel like I've just totally rewired my nervous system from the inside out, and have really healed a lot of past trauma that no matter, how much counseling, therapy I did, it just seemed like nothing was ever working.
So you had been through the traditional routes before.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it.
And so what brought you, to the medicines, and then what was the journey like?
Yeah, so there's this moment in my life when I first started nursing school where a lot kind of started coming up to the surface. There was an emotionally traumatic event that happened in my family. I'm not going to go into detail with that, but basically it just really it was kind of the tip of the iceberg kind of event where my whole body broke down. I couldn't handle any stress. I almost quit nursing school. I was in so much, pain, physical pain throughout my body. I couldn't even get out of bed. And basically I
Wow.
went through the gamut of, practitioners in the San Francisco Bay Area with wonderful insurance, and nobody could seem to pinpoint, the root cause of what was going on with all these symptoms, like brain fog, just constantly in fight or flight and feeling really frozen and out of touch, even suicidal at times. And basically I felt like I just kept trying things, listening to my doctors. I even tried medications that they gave me, and it just made things worse. And, it came to a point where I was very suicidal and I was in so much pain. And I
Wow.
started looking into psychedelics and learned that a lot of people healed themselves with kind of similar things that I was going through at the time. And basically I had nothing to lose, and, started kind
Yeah.
of working with psilocybin at home with my close friends.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so basically, the beginning for me was working with psilocybin in, the forests in Berkeley, the redwood
Wow.
forests, and basically, taking the medicine with close friends. And, I felt really safe with these people, really comfortable. They knew a lot about, who I am and kind of my past. And, I definitely felt safe enough to let things come up. And, that's the thing with these medicines is, a lot can come up to the surface that's, repressed and, suppressed in our mind and our body. And, you don't even realize it's there, but basically, the psilocybin was like the beginning of the journey that opened the floodgate to a lot of what I was holding on to that was making me sick and really causing me to be in a lot of pain and suffer.
And so with these safe friends, did you also do some research on set and setting and intentions and dosage and those kind of things?
Oh yeah, definitely. Set and setting is everything when it comes to these medicines. You have to feel safe in the area you're at, with the people you're with. And it really needs to be a sacred container that is very safe,
I like that.
because a
Yeah.
lot can come up.
So what then happened? Do you want to tell us about a specific journey that really had an impact on you? Maybe the one that you and I alluded to, the quote bad
Yeah.
trip, that really helped you?
Yeah. So, I don't really like to term it bad necessarily.
Yeah.
Yes, it feels bad. It could feel like you're dying literally sometimes, but, I just call it dark, very dark
Hmm.
experiences when I take, enough of the medicine, where I journey deep enough and, basically a lot of past trauma within my current life. And, that involved, close family members, especially, my parents came up, as a child,
Mm.
we all go through trauma. No one's immune to trauma. And trauma is just anything too fast, too soon, too much,
Yeah.
To the nervous system where you can't process it. And, I definitely went through a lot of that, physical, emotional, sexual, abuse and
Mm.
neglect a lot. And, I'm not going to go into details with that, but basically, um, a lot of that stuff came up in the sense of I was remembering things that I wasn't able to recall,
Mm.
and I was like reliving it. I literally felt like there was no sense of time when I was on these medicines in these dark moments, and I was, a child again, going through these experiences. But something behind the scenes felt like it was holding me, like, it was allowing me to be safe and move through all this stuff, and like almost like a voice telling me that, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I kind of have to go through that in order to not be in so much pain and suffering.
Well, so you felt like you're going through this dark experience, and these past traumas are bubbling back up to the surface, ones you weren't even aware of. But even with all that going on, you felt this presence back there that was kind of holding you and keeping you safe.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's
Wow.
been times, on these medicines where I literally hear a voice and it totally is like, it's not my voice, it's something outside of me. And, usually it's a very feminine voice, almost like
Hmm.
a woman, a mother, who, yeah, is telling me, everything's okay. And, I'm exactly where I need to be, but, I need to look at this. I need to shine the flashlight into these dark parts of myself that I've not processed. I did not,
Hmm.
move through as a child. And I'm basically carrying with me.
So, I don't want to necessarily go into a trip report because, like I tell people, that's like
Yeah.
hearing somebody's dream. But it's, can you tell us, a little bit about what the experience was like, and and maybe you already have, because you got these past memories and these traumas bubble to the surface, So, what else is there about the journey you might want to tell us, and then what was it like afterwards?
I mean, yeah, I mean, basically with psilocybin and mostly actually ayahuasca, that's where I've gone even deeper. It's a more potent medicine. And I basically have done these in ceremonies, versus the psilocybin was just kind of by myself or with close friends. The
Yeah.
ayahuasca ceremonies were, ran by basically a clinical psychotherapist in the Bay Area who left her practice and, trained with shamans in the
Hmm.
rainforest with Shipibo shamans, and basically host these circles. And, that was my first time with ayahuasca after the psilocybin. And that's when I really dove deep. And, basically I thought I was dying. Like I literally in a way died many times during these ceremonies, and just bawling my eyes out, snot running down my face, like
Yeah.
throwing up, puking, just my body is like convulsing, shaking. There's just so much processing that I can't even bring words to at times. But now looking back, it's so profound how much the body can heal, and knows how to heal when we work with these medicines in the right set and setting, of course.
And so, and with an ayahuasca experience, they talk about purging, and a lot of times they'll say
Mhm.
people will purge by vomiting or by shaking, by laughing, by crying, and it sounds like you had a lot of purging going on
Oh,
with this. Is
yes,
that, is that what it felt like?
definitely. And, when it initially happened, I thought something was wrong. And then the more and more that I worked with, especially ayahuasca, I just learned to allow this process and trust the process because, after the first, second time I worked with these medicines, I felt like a completely different person after. I mean, the depression was basically gone, anxiety, no suicidal ideation. My chronic pain went down significantly just after working with psilocybin, and then let alone ayahuasca. That's when things really changed for me. And, I just learned that, these are very potent, ancient, sacred medicines. And, they know what they're doing. I mean, they're here for a reason, I think. And there's no way I would be where I am without them, honestly. But yeah, I mean, they're very dark experiences at times, like the darkest things I've ever been through in many ways that have created the most light in my life.
And that's the irony, right? Is this experience or these experiences, you felt like literally like you were dying. I mean, you hear the term ego death a lot.
Totally.
Sometimes I feel like that is ego talking, ironically at the time, but ego death, you feel like physically like you're dying and you're leaving your body, and there's this whole cleansing aspect to it. Like you said, the darkness of the journey results in a lightness at the end of the tunnel, or a lightness in life.
Yes, definitely.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty
Mhm.
amazing. And so I take it you continue to go through some of these journeys and continue to learn from the medicines?
Oh, yeah. I mean, what's just so profound about them, and just about the human potential to be unconscious, there's nothing inherently wrong
Mm,
with being unconscious, but I honestly am starting to believe that the more unconscious we are, the more pain we can have in our life. And, we then, that extends to other places and other people. And, the more conscious I can be, I can make more conscious actions, and I can
hmm
choose instead of just react to life. And that's what it's really allowed me to realize, is just recovering lost parts of myself and discovering capacities I thought I never had, and just feeling more whole and tapping into my authentic self.
Yeah. What what else do you want to tell us about the specific work, with the medicines and the outcomes that you've had from them? Anything else that we haven't talked about so far?
Well, I did want to bring in the significance of like extreme trauma and childhood trauma, and how that affects the nervous
Yeah.
system. Um, yeah, it's this kind of trauma, when it's really extreme, or chronic, especially with childhood trauma, it's very complex. It usually occurs with our primary attachment figures, mom, dad, grandparent. Usually we're coming from especially from 0 to 7 years age, we're coming from a completely different brainwave frequency state, the theta
Mm,
brainwave. And it's more hypnotic. We don't have a lot of metacognition going on, if at all. The prefrontal cortex is not really, stimulated during this time. And we're basically just sponges, absorbing everything from our environment without any filter of logic. And
yeah.
basically, if there's trauma during this time, I mean, it gets deeply embedded into our nervous system, our mind and our body. And just because we can't recall it, or remember anything about it, doesn't mean that we're not affected by it all the time. And that's what's just so profound to me, is like, I did not realize how much of my past I was carrying with me, and how it was honestly making me really sick. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would not be where I am. I feel like a completely different person, and I feel free, honestly, in my mind and in my body, most of my waking moments. And that is not how I felt for most of my life.
Wow.
So yeah,
I want to inject here and then
yeah.
come back to it real quick. For anybody that's listening, it's like, well, who does she think she is? She is a registered nurse and a health coach and a functional medicine practitioner. So, you are somebody who knows these things. When you're talking about the prefrontal cortex and the development of the brain, this is something that from your professional trainings and experience that you understand these things.
Definitely. I mean, there's more that I don't know, but I know enough, especially with working with, hundreds of patients and clients, different acute
Yeah.
hospital settings, seeing some of the sickest of the sick, and just realizing, after talking with a lot of people, opening up and hearing their stories in the hospital, or just even with my health coaching clients, like, a lot of us are carrying a lot more than we think, and it's affecting a lot more of us than we understand. And there is a way to move through this and let go of things, and really tap more into our power and our authentic self, and feel happy, because that's really what life's about, is feeling happy and free and connected, to your authentic self and other people who you love around you.
Yeah. And so, um, within all these medicines and as a professional in this field, um, what else do you want people to know about these medicines? I mean, do you talk about this? Are you able to talk about these things in your professional life? Do you have to segregate them into different sections? Have you dealt with any resistance or any stigma, around these subjects? I mean, how have you incorporated all this, if at all?
I mean, Yeah, it's a funny question because I mean, the majority of people, even just walking down the street, if you were to, start talking about psychedelics as, potent healing medicines, most people would look at you like you're crazy. And,
Yeah.
that definitely extends to the kind of conventional allopathic mainstream medical setting, especially in the hospital. Like, yeah, there's no way I'm just going to start talking about the stuff, even though I know some people may be open to it, and it would help them, but it wouldn't necessarily be in alignment and best for them to even hear that because they're just so sick. They're in a very kind of traumatized place, and their doctors are not going to be in alignment with that. So if I'm not in alignment with the doctor, that's going to confuse the patient, even
Yeah.
if what I'm sharing is of truth and is backed by research, and science. So that's what's so
Yeah.
unfortunate. I really hope more of these medicines will start being implemented in a more kind of vast way where it's more easily accessible to those who feel called and need it, especially those dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, complex PTSD, and can't seem to make headway, and
Hmm.
they feel stuck.
Yeah. What about friends, personal friends, like not in the professional world, but friends and family? How have they reacted to, these journeys of yours and this path that you've taken? And have any of them kind of seen the difference? I mean, you're talking about some real changes in your life from, the anxiety and the depression and suicidality, to having happiness, like you just said a minute ago, tap into some personal power and have some happiness. So the reaction from your friends and family, both on the stigma side, like, what are you doing, Holly? But also on the side of like, hey, I see a real difference in you. What have some of the reactions been like there?
Yeah, I mean, most of the reactions are of people noticing a shift in me, and many shifts actually. And some people respond in a way where they're like, "Oh, what is that? I want to know more about that." But then, unfortunately, but it's normal. There's a lot of people who maybe get triggered by me changing so quickly, and honestly, just vibrating higher in many ways, and feeling really good, and more resilient to life in general. Yeah, it can trigger people, especially
Yeah.
those who maybe are not feeling very good with where they're at.
Mm.
And then, that's just with anyone. Sometimes when we see people who are maybe happier, it can kind of remind us of how unhappy we are.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I never really thought about that, but it's kind of the way friends and family can react with anything in life. When you come and say, "Hey, here's something new that I'm doing," they can, because of their own thing, kind of have this um, tangential reaction or even negative reaction to what you're doing.
totally.
Um, so how, if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, "Yeah, I have some of these things going on, just like Holly, or I feel like I might have some of these memories, or whatever." Do you have any recommendations? I know we want to be careful. We don't want to say go out and do it, because even if, for me, people come to me and ask me for advice, and I'm like, hey, you have to come to it on your own path. I won't even tell you to do any of this stuff. But if
Yeah.
somebody does say, I'm feeling the call or whatever, what are some of the first things that they should do or look at, or do you have any thoughts or recommendations on somebody getting started on these journeys, or do you want to just stay away from that?
I mean, I'll speak to it a little bit. I think first and foremost, like this medicine, any of them, psychedelic medicine in general, is not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
Especially when you're taking larger doses. Like, if it's not done in the right set and setting, let alone who's making maybe the brew of ayahuasca, giving you these plant medicines, like, or any kind of psychedelic, really. You got to be careful. You don't know necessarily what's in it, what kind of energy was put in it. And, again, set and setting is everything.
Yeah.
You can be, totally re-traumatized with, new traumas basically that are very detrimental if things go south, in the sense of, the set and setting was not right for you. Or
Yeah.
maybe you just were not fully ready. But I would say, if anyone out there listening, feels like a pull, a deep pull towards it, go and research, look into it, start getting on YouTube, listen to other people's stories, talk to people around you, read books, look into the research. And, definitely reach out to me, if anyone has any questions about specific, centers that hold these ceremonies around the world, because
Yeah.
there are definitely some that are better than others.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the primary things. I see it all over the place online. Is people are always like, "Hey, I'm ready to do this, and I want to go, but where do I go? Which center in Peru or in Ecuador or in Brazil? Where do I go?" And you hear so many
Mhm.
questions. So people can actually reach out to you and ask if they want to.
Totally. Oh,
Awesome.
totally. Yeah.
That's very generous.
Mhm.
What about integration? You hear a lot about integration. Um, what kind of a role did that play? I think when you go through such a powerful experience as you went through, um, not letting the lessons just flow by like a river and being able to make them part of your life and learn and achieve that power and happiness that you talked about. What did you have to do in terms of integrating all that into your life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, you know, our bodies know how to naturally basically heal themselves and flourish and expand, when we're surrounded by healthy signals. And, it's these medicines are not necessary in order for us to tap into this kind of ability to kind of regenerate ourselves, heal ourselves, and feel happy and free. But they are deep facilitators. They can help us kind of get to that place faster. But it's important to realize that it's not just all the medicine. It's not just all this external thing out there. Like, a huge part of this process is like, okay, yes, the medicine, worked through me. It healed parts of myself, but we also have the ability to tap into that exact type of medicine without these psychedelics. And so that's really where the psychedelic, integration comes in. It's like, what did we learn from these medicines, and how can we really integrate it into the modern day and age, which is usually very different from where a lot of these ceremonies are hosted, deep in rainforests,
Yeah.
out in nature, completely, kind of off grid, away from, concrete jungles in general. And so sometimes, yeah, you can come back to, these cities and just this modern way of living, and kind of be in shock. And it's almost like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know how to integrate anything because
Yeah.
it's just so different. But, that's why I believe it's so important to work with somebody in, before, during, and even after, especially after all of this stuff, because a lot comes up. I mean, these things change you from the inside out, and it is for the better, but it can be intense. Change is not always easy. And sometimes usually we do need help to integrate these things, or else we kind of lose touch and forget.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know sometimes the opposite can be true, that a lesson can be so subtle that you don't catch it
Mm-hmm.
until you start talking to somebody who knows kind of how to ask the right questions and really help and help you discover that there were some good lessons in a journey.
Exactly.
So you've been through all this, and first of all, congratulations. And I feel like so happy for you that you
Mm-hmm.
went through all this and made these changes. It's phenomenal. Um,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, and now that you're at this point in life, you've kind of taken this and you're turning it around to help other people. Do you want to share with us kind of what the types of things you're doing and what you're doing officially to help other people who are kind of going along the same path?
Yeah, I mean, I work with people from all over the world, usually virtually, one-on-one private sessions online through like Zoom calls. And, most of the work that I do with my clients are during these coaching calls, where we're on a Zoom call for 1 or 2 hours. And, part of it also has to do with the modules of information and just wisdom and resources that I offer. But yeah, really the main work that I do is really just, it's all about the client and, where are they at? What have they been through? How is maybe their past affecting them and they're not realizing it? And, how, chronic stress
Mm,
affects us, and, how can we best process through this so we don't kind of get in our own way? It's really about how do we get out of our own way and um, tap back into a lifestyle that is more in alignment with how we're programmed and designed to live.
mm,
Our Paleolithic ancestors really wasn't that long ago, generally speaking. over human evolution, that we were living in a completely different way. And, modern life is really not that long. And we are living very out of touch with kind of how our, just our
Yeah.
DNA is programmed and designed to be. And so, yeah, a lot of it is lifestyle and diet and, mindset training and all that. But, a lot of it really, people don't realize that they come to me for these lifestyle diet changes, and then they realize that a lot of the reasons why they're not able to maybe do these things and make this action that they know will help them is because they are kind of carrying around trauma and stress, and they don't know how to discharge it from their nervous system. So that's really a lot of the work I do.
And they may not even know they're carrying it around.
Oh yeah. No, most people don't.
So they kind of come to you with symptoms or just things that are going on in their lives, and through the work, then they discover, they reconnect with how like you said, how they were programmed, and they may just uncover some trauma or some other issues as part of that whole process.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, what else, Holly? What have I not asked you? What else do you want to share with everybody?
It's not really much.
Okay.
Yeah, we went over
Well,
a
that was
lot.
incredible. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing with us, because, like you said, people say the words bad trip all the time. And a lot of us will respond and say, well, there's really no such thing as a bad trip. But for you to come in here and talk about some of these dark experiences and how they really, showed you the light and helped you make some really great changes, I'm just really grateful for you sharing those stories and hopefully helping other people along their journeys.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's really happy to be here. It's honestly a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Stuart.
Yeah, my honor. Thank you, Holly.
That concludes this edition of the Stoned Ape Reports. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Instagram at Stoned Ape Comedy and subscribe to our newsletter at www.stonedapecomedy.com. Again, thanks for listening, and catch you next time, Stoned Apes.